guys, welcome back to another Destiny 2 video. Today's video is the first Warlock build for Season 22, and it's one I'm very excited to show with you because it's one I've been working on since last season, and recently with some new patch notes involving subclass changes as well as some new additions. I think this is the perfect season to actually showcase it, as it's one of my favorite playstyles on Warlock. A few highlights of the build include having basically infinite grapple charges, allowing you to have some insane mobility and really high damage grapple melees thanks to stuff like Verity's Brow, as well as having a ton of fireteam support and general survivability built right into it. Along with all of this, we also have some amazing weapon synergy, both in terms of our subclass synergy and just pure damage. And our tangles can not only generate us heavy and special ammo, but also deal 150% more damage, can serve as just general grapple points for our strand melees, and also deal an AoE suspending effect whenever they're thrown. If you like the video, be sure to like and subscribe for more Destiny 2 content like this, and let me know down in the comments what you want to see going into the future. Getting right into the subclass then. For your abilities, you can either use Healing or Empowering Rift. It really just depends on what you prefer. Neither really affects the playstyle of this build. And then for your grenade, you're going to go with your Grapple Strand Grenade. This is just because this is how this whole build operates. While other playstyles are very noticeable on Strand Warlocks, such as Shockwave Grenade giving you Weaver's Trance, or Threadling Grenades just generating a ton of Threadlings, Grapple Grenades aren't typically used as much, and this is why I really want to focus a build on them and show what was actually possible with just some decent investment. As far as your aspects go, the two we're using are the Wanderer and Mindspun Invocation. The Wanderer is basically going to allow you to throw tangles, and whenever these tangles are thrown, they suspend into an AoE effect, and anytime you destroy a tangle, it creates that same suspending effect. And also anytime you get a Threadling Final Blow, it'll generate a tangle after a short cooldown. For Mindspun Invocation, simply put, it enhances your grenade ability. For us with our Shockwave Grenade, anytime we do our grapple melee ability, it'll spawn 3 additional Threadlings. And this grapple melee ability actually hits pretty hard, and we can take advantage of it in a few different ways, both in terms of mods and our exotic. And I'll get into that in a little bit later. As far as fragments go, this is actually very customizable, so if at any point in what I'm showing you, you really don't want to use a specific fragment or want to slot something in to just kind of change up the playstyle of this build, you totally can. Before I'm going with though, our Thread of Hoarding. This will just simply grant us Woven Mail whenever we pick up an Orb of Power. This isn't required because we actually have another way to get Woven Mail with this build, but I find this is just very simple at reprocking Woven Mail whenever that timer goes away. And also, since we're generating so many Orbs of Power with this build, I feel that this is just a nice quality of life thing to have. I'm also using Thread of Propagation, which allows any strand melee final blow to grant our strand weapons unraveling rounds. I'm also using Thread of Transmutation, which anytime you have Woven Mail, a weapon final blow will create a tangle. This is just another avenue of which we can generate tangles, meaning that we can kind of bypass that general cooldown by having multiple different ways to generate those tangles rather than waiting for one specific method. And then finally, I'm using Thread of Ascent. While this provides some bonus with airborne effectiveness and handling, the main reason we're doing this is because whenever we activate our grenade ability, in this case our grapple ability, it allows our equipped weapon to be reloaded instantaneously. And since we basically have infinite grapple melees, this means that as long as we're playing a little bit carefully and a little bit mindful of where we are in our positioning, we basically never have to reload, and this can allow us to have some high burst DPS weapons like our Strand Rocket or Grenade Launcher that I'll recommend to just basically be instantly reloaded and allow us to keep shooting. Some other fragments I'd recommend in case you don't want to use any of these four include stuff like Thread of Evolution, and this allows our Threadlings to travel further and deal more damage, and this also works with the 3 Threadlings that are generated from Mindspun Invocation. The main reason I'm not is because Threadlings actually got a pretty big buff at the start of the season, I believe around 30% damage just flat out, and so I don't really feel the need to do this. Also, since our Strand Grapple melee is being used with Verity's Brow, most of the damage from our melee grapple is going to come from the grapple itself, not really the Threadlings that spawn afterwards, but you can use this to enhance the damage even further. You can also use Thread of Generation, which will grant you periodic grenade energy regen just for simply dealing damage. While this is going to benefit this build, it depends on your playstyle and your experience with it. In general, what I've noticed is this was something I used very early on when I was deciding how to design this build for this season, and now I just simply don't need to use it because I know how to properly space and time grapples and tangle spawns, and as well as using our navigator for spawning in the grapple point. You don't really need your grenade charge to regen very quickly, and when you lose it, there are very easy ways to get it back very, very fast. And so you just really don't need this the more experience you become with this build. But if you're just starting off and you're struggling with the timing or playstyle, this is something that you can easily put on and have some decent effects with. And then finally is just Thread of Continuity, and this will just simply extend the effects of Suspending, Unraveling, and Severing, which we can apply all 3 very easily with this build. Briefly going over the artifact mods that are relevant for the build today. The first 2 are going to be Origin Perk Specialization 1 and 2. These are just simply going to enhance the effect and give an overcharge bonus to any weapon with the origin traits of Head Rush, Nanotech Tracer Rockets, Unsated Hunger, and Cursed Thrall. as well as Thanatotic Tangles, which any strand weapon final blow has a chance to generate a tangle. These tangles will again generate an AoE suspending effect whenever we destroy them or throw them. You also have refreshing pickups, which anytime you pick up a tangle or an elemental orb, it grants you ability energy. This is most often going to be benefiting your grenade charge in case you lose it with this build, but is again just a nice thing to have to generate your melee or rift charge if you need it while you're using this playstyle. You also have communal pickups, which anytime an ally picks up and throws your tangle, the tangle cooldown for you will reduce by 5 seconds, and you get a small weapon damage bonus for an additional 10 seconds. You also have Elemental Fury, which anytime a champion is stunned, they take bonus damage from your abilities or elemental orb damage. So for us, this would dramatically increase the damage that our grapple melee does on a stunned champion. The final mod is Frenzied Stacks, and in short, whenever you have stacks of armor charge, you get bonus damage to any thrown tangles. Now, what some people don't know is that the stacking damage bonus is actually relevant to how many stacks of armor charge you have. At 1, it's 30% to 60%, and so on and so forth, where if you have 6 stacks, it goes all the way up to 180%. And then finally, we have Elemental Munitions, which anytime we get a final blow with a tangle, there's a chance to drop special or heavy ammo to support our weapons with this build. The chances of these bricks spawning are around 20 to 33%, and it's an independent chance for both of them. So what this means is you can get special ammo and heavy ammo at the same time, or just one or the other, or none at all, depending on how your chances actually roll. Getting right into the armor and the mods for today, starting off on our helmet, and actually our exotic today is Verity's Brow. And Verity's is one of my favorite exotics on Warlock for basically any playstyle, and there's a very good reason for it. In short, what Verity's does is whenever you get matching elemental final blows with weapons that match your subclass, for example a strand subclass with strand weapons, it grants you progressively stacking damage bonuses to your grenade, as well as enhanced grenade energy regen. In fact, each stack of death throws gives you a 50% grenade regen rate and a 20% increase to your grenade damage, meaning that at 5 stacks, you have 250% grenade regen and a 100% increase in your grenade damage, which means for our grapple melee, this will deal 2 times the damage it normally does. On top of this, anytime you use your grenade ability while death throws is active, any ally within 20 meters of you gets a 10 times grenade regen for 5 seconds. And since this whole build relies on basically infinite grapple grenades and grapple charges, this means that any allies nearby are going to have constant grenade regen basically for the entire activity. When you combine this with the fact that we can generate our own grapple points, and we can also rely on all the tangles that we're using with this build, this means that in basically any scenario, you can have your teammates get a ton of grenade ability regen basically on demand. And of course, your benefit is not only do you have a ton of grenade regen, but your grapple melee does 2 times the damage. For our mods though, I'm personally going with Harmonic Siphon. This will allow any rapid strand weapon final blow to create an orb of power, again just contributing to the stacks of armor charge we can generate with this build. I'm also going with Powerful Friends, which in short, anytime we collect an orb of power, it causes any nearby allies to also gain a stack of armor charge. And this works perfectly with the whole fireteam support aspect that the build actually has, and we can take this even further as we're going to have a ton of orb gens with this build. And then finally, I'm also using Asher's assets just so those strand grapple melee kills actually generate us a little bit more super energy, as that strand grapple counts for both a melee kill and a grenade kill. For our gauntlets, I'm going with Impact Induction, and the main reason behind this is that there are scenarios where we might have to use our grapple grenade, whether it's for survivability or we just don't have a grapple point to actually get it back instantly. This allows that melee grapple that we do to give us a little bit of grenade energy regen just for simply landing the hit. This isn't something we'll take advantage of often, but it is good in case we ever break our grapple chain. For the other two, I'm also using Heavy Handed and Firepower, which allows us to generate up to 2 orbs of power every time we get a strand grapple melee kill. I do want to point out it is a little inconsistent, as this sometimes won't spawn both of them, it'll just spawn one, but it can spawn 2 of them. It just is a little bit varied because strand grapple melees are a bit iffy in the game in terms of how it actually decides which is which. For chest piece, I'm going with 2 stacks of Charged Up. If you don't want to use a general armor mod like I'm using to boost resilience, you can use a third or swap this out for reserve or resist depending on what activity you're doing. Now, the main reason I'm using 2 stacks of armor charge is to boost our total stacks to 5, which again with Frenzied Stacks allows our tangle when thrown to deal 150% more damage. Again, if you want to bring this to 3 stacks of Charged Up, this could go to 180%. But again, if you wanted to, you can swap this out for reserves or resist. You can use 1 thing of Charged Up and fix the other 2 for reserves or resist. However you want to build out your chest piece is totally fine. I'm just keeping that in mind that you can dramatically boost the damage your tangle's doing, which also then effect can help you spawn more special and heavy ammo by using more stacks of Charged Up. For our legs, I'm using 2 stacks of Strand Weapon Surge just to boost our strand weapon damage by 16%. And then finally, I'm using Recuperation just so anytime we pick up an orb of power, we get some health regen. And again, this will basically mean that anytime we use Heavy Handed and Firepower to get 2 orbs of power, we'll get this double effect, basically fully healing us as long as we get a strand grapple melee kill. However, if you want to swap this out for a scavenger mod or something like another stack of Strand Weapon Surge, go ahead and do that. For our bond, the first one I'm going with is Time Dilation, just simply bringing the duration of our armor charge stack decay from 10 seconds to 15 seconds. You can go ahead and equip multiple copies of this as well. Besides this, I'm also going with Font of Restoration, and the main reason behind this is just so that we can get plus 30 stat points to our recovery, which allow us to get our Rift back much quicker. This is completely personal preference and based off of my stat distributions. If you wanted to go with another stack of time dilation, that would also work perfectly fine. Some other mods you could use though include Powerful Attraction, which allow you to pick up any nearby orbs of power when you use your class ability, as well as stuff like Reaper, which guarantees after using your class ability, the next final weapon blow will spawn an orb of power. Finally, onto the weapons I'd recommend using with this build. The first weapon in our exotic for today is Navigator. This isn't something you need to use with this build if you don't have it or just don't want to, but it is a huge component of what makes the ease of use of this build so much better. The Navigator is the exotic drop from the Ghost of the Deep dungeon, and basically it has a few effects that we can take advantage of that contribute to the potency of this build. The first is anytime you fire this weapon at an ally, you both get Woven Mail, and anytime you sustain fire on an enemy, it actually severs the target. And severing actually got a buff at the start of the season, which now grants a 40% damage reduction on that specific enemy. The other reason we're using Navigator though is because of the Grapple Tangle special catalyst. In short, what it does is with the special reload, you can fire a grapple tangle, which lets you perform your grapple melee basically infinitely in a specific area. This is really good in boss arenas or just extended encounters wherever you have to stay within a similar area for a very long time and deal with a ton of ads. At the very least, this is a very easy way to have a grapple point that you can traverse areas with and just simply retain your grenade charge. Besides Navigator though, basically any strand weapon works perfectly fine. Immortal SMG, which is basically dominating Crucible right now, also works pretty well in PvE, and something like Round Robin, which is the craftable hand cannon from Neomuna, has a ton of benefits going for it, specifically in this season. As far as pairings for the Navigator though, I'm personally going to go with Semiotician, which is the rocket launcher from this season, and the Abyss Defiant, which is the auto rifle from Crota's End Raid. Both origin traits from these weapons are benefited with perk specialization, meaning that both these weapons have a constant 25% damage multiplier in overcharged activities, as well as having just enhanced effects for what they actually provide. For Abyss Defiant, the main reason I'm using it is because of its anti-barrier capabilities being an auto rifle for this season, but also because of Cursed Thrall, which after defeating a target with a melee attack, final blows with this weapon cause it to explode in a Cursed Thrall explosion, which deals a small damage over time effect to nearby enemies. And just in case you're wondering, yes, this means that our grapple melee can activate Cursed Thrall on any Crota's End weapons and have that AoE explosion basically all the time. The main reason I'm going with Semiotician is because of Head Rush, which is buffed by perk specialization, meaning that it has a constant 25% damage boost in overcharged activities. On top of this, it also gets our Surge weapon stack bonus, as well as having its own intrinsic bonus thanks to being able to unravel targets thanks to our subclass fragments. For the perks on this weapon, I personally went with Field Prep to greatly enhance its reserves, as well as Explosive Light because we're generating a ton of orbs with this build, being that this can always have Explosive Light active basically whenever we need it. One rule I do want to point out though is that you can go with Field Prep and Enhanced Bipod, and this will bring its total reserves up to 15 with one reserve, 14 without any reserves. Keep in mind the damage reduction Bipod initially had was reduced, although it's still fairly noticeable. As far as other weapons go, you can use basically any Neomuna weapon. Stuff like Irritative Loop or Circular Logic do really well with this build, and again are also buffed by perk specialization. Some other strand weapons I recommend include stuff like Caraxes' Distress, which is the Root of Nightmare's grenade launcher. I have mine with enhanced demo and hatchling on it. Besides that though, any Crota's End weapons work really well. I haven't been fortunate enough to have any patterns unlocked for them yet, but again, because of the Cursed Thrall effect and how it interacts with our strand grapple melee, it's a really simple thing that you can take advantage of with this build. All in all guys, that's the build for today. Like I mentioned earlier, this was a playstyle and a build I actually made last season and just decided not to showcase because it wasn't really strong enough. Because of some changes that came at the start of Season 22, as well as some new seasonal mods that greatly enhance Strand's benefits compared to last season, this means that this build can really shine and showcase its full potential for basically anyone who wants to try it. Like I mentioned earlier, this build has basically infinite grapple charges as long as you're playing it with a little bit of thought, and can greatly support your fire team with dramatically enhanced grenade regen, as well as basically free stacks of armor charge for just being nearby. And our tangles can not only generate us heavy and special ammo, but also deal 150% more damage and serve as just general grapple points for our strand melees, and also deal an AoE suspending effect whenever they're thrown. Thank you guys so much for watching. I greatly appreciate your continued support on these videos, and let me know down in the comments what you're hoping to see in the near future, as well as what you thought of the build today. Be sure to like and subscribe for more Test2 content like this, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thank you guys so much, and have a great day.